Our main protagonist is Kim Suho, but in this world, they call him Lloyd Fronter, and he is just an ordinary civil engineer. He and his assistant Habiel will change the world. They want to turn all this land into money. This will be the story of the money-making monster. Some year ago in a small village, a window pops up telling him that he is now a supreme being. He will take the role of a fictional character in the Iron-Blooded Engineer novel. So do your best and good luck. He finally understood it. It was like reincarnation webtoons that he reads so often, but here's the thing. Why do I wake up with my face in the ground in the middle of nowhere? His mouth was acting funny, and the windows make sure he knows this. These systems make him irritated. He was thinking about what his character is in this novel before he got interrupted by his assistant. His name is Javier, and he is the main character of the novel. Now he is a regular knight, but when the story progresses he will become well known all over the continent as the swordsman Javier, and he is the Lloyd Fronter, the hooligan. This will be a nightmare if they went back home. Javier told that he was drinking during the day and smashed the furniture in the bar, and while he was heading back home he fell into the ground. His father sent him because he was worried about his stupid son. He wouldn't want to mourn an idiotic son's dislocated mouth who died away from home. Lloyd notices that the ground is very cold, which will make sleeping impossible, and before Javier goes, Lloyd stops him and asks him a question. He asks if his family is drowning in debt. To which he replies that's a new word for him, and then slams the door behind him. Lloyd didn't need to ask that question in the first place because he already knew what would happen. The Baron and his wife will commit after getting swindled by a wicked con man, losing all their property, and Lloyd became intoxicated, and in the end, he threw up blood and died. What this miserable ending! He is just sad as he was in the real world. In the morning his mother, who is named Marbella Frontera, confronts him about what he did yesterday. She told him to go in to make sure to apologize this time. Lloyd told her that he will apologize him for his deeds. His reply surprised them. They thought that he was still drunk from the last night. They start walking in the village, but all the people were avoiding him, even the children told to don't look at him. They are all disgusted by him. He needs to change his image as soon as possible, and since he is the Baron's son, he had the possibility to live an easy life till he died. He checks to see if there is any cheat system he can use, but the only skills he has right now are the scumbag and troublesome drunkard. This must be a joke. They finally arrive at the bar. Javier was looking deep into Lloyd's soul. There has been some change in him since last night. He looks like a completely different person. Inside the bar everything was broken. Lloyd apologizes to the bar owner, but still, no one can trust him anymore. Lloyd says he is sorry, but he doesn't look like someone who is actually sorry. The owner was afraid of him. His image was a complete disaster. Lloyd asked why the bar owner was unhappy, to which Habiel replied that the owner was unhappy because Lloyd had destroyed all of the furniture in the bar, which the owner had purchased through hard work and effort. Habiel also mentioned that the owner's mother was still suffering from the cold from the previous winter and that Lloyd had also ruined the business. Lloyd felt guilty about what he did, while he was thinking about how they hadn't discovered the heating system yet. Suddenly he stopped, and the idea came right into his mind. There is no heating system in this world, but if he just managed to build one. Kim Suho, who is a civil engineer, has come up with an idea that he believes will sell out in a short amount of time. This is possible because of Suho's experience in building houses and working as a construction worker. Suho has built many houses while serving in the army and has consistently worked as a construction worker, day and night. He believes that this experience will help him achieve success with his new project. He will start with this and pay off all their debts. He will go back to the bar. He will get his first order there, but suddenly a new window shows up and his real journey has just begun. The RP system has been enabled. RP is the relationship point he can get by improving relationships with key characters that changes everything. Lloyd didn't quite understand what was meant by RP, but he knew it had something to do with the key characters. So he looked at Javier with very suspicious eyes. His favorable impression of him was ridiculously low. He wanted to try something. He looked at Javier in a very attractive way and said that he is looking really handsome today. Javier was disgusted by him and his impression was getting even lower than before. He needs to stop for now before he makes him angry. They arrive at the bar again. Lloyd prepares a contract to build the heating system for the bar owner. He will pay for what he destroyed last time by this building operation, and as you expected, he didn't believe a single word coming out of this piece of crap's mouth. He even uses the mind wall skill to block any kind of mind manipulation. Lloyd doesn't have a choice, so he threatens the bar owner, and then he immediately signs the contract without hesitation. Lloyd is such a scumbag. Finally, he got his first contract. It was a pleasure doing business with you, sir. They went outside the bar. Javier asks him, why did you threaten the bar owner, and forced him to sign the contract. This is a despicable act. Lloyd looked at him with calm eyes and told him that everyone expects him to be a scumbag because of what he did in the past. This is why no one will trust or believe him if he tries to be genuine and honest with them anymore. That surprised Javier, since when he started to talk with a reasonable mind, he will make the bar owner and his mother happy no matter what. Their smile will be the foundation of his money empire. He started digging into the ground and hitting it with his shovel. Then he started to build using the wood from his family warehouse, but his body couldn't keep up with him. Is too tired, but he quickly gets interrupted by Javier. He was surprised about what he did. For the first time, he did something useful in his life. All the parts of his body were hurting him, but he needed to keep going. He tried to slice the wood, but when he lifted up the axe, he was about to fall, but Javier caught him, and he took the axe from him. He wanted to help. He threw the wood in the air, and with his sorting skill, he slices all the wood into a perfect slice that was incredible, as expected from someone who will be the greatest sword master in the future. But instead of thanking him for helping him out, he asks him to help him again in digging the ground. He must be curious about what he is trying to build, so if he can help him, they will finish fast. He was dying to see what he was planning to do. They both start digging in the ground fast and quick, and finally, they finished constructing the building. The long-awaited room was finally finished, much to the delight of the bar owner and his mother, who were enjoying the warm and cozy atmosphere within. The room looked great, with the logo of their company proudly displayed on the wall. The bar owner was grateful to Lloyd for using his magic to make everything come together perfectly and for bringing happiness to his mother's face. Javier was surprised by the result. There is no doubt about it, Lloyd is now a different person. He still can't believe this actually happened. They both seemed so happy about it, and this itself makes him happy. His impression of Lloyd changed up 2 points. Lloyd paid a lot of money into building this, but that isn't a problem because in the end, this house is merely for promotion. Despite the room's successful operation over the past few days, Lloyd faced difficulty in convincing the people to hire him to build a similar one. He presented them with a contract, offering his services, but the people were hesitant to trust him. Lloyd resorted to threatening them in an effort to persuade them to accept his offer, but suddenly someone called his name. It was his father. His name was Arcus Frontera, and his impression of him was -20. In their mansion, while they are eating, his father asks him about what he is planning to start this time, to which he replies that the owner ordered a heated room, so he built it for him. His father then told him to not lie to those people who can't stand his lie anymore. Lloyd was about to go, but his father told him that he must know by now his family's situation. But don't worry, your father will make it through. He heard those words before he came into this world. At that time he really thought that things was gonna be fine, but it's a lie after all. He leaves and tells his father to not give up because he will hang in there too. In his room he was thinking about this RP point and how he can use it. The system then starts to scan him to see what he is good at, and while scanning the system finds all the civil engineering data in his head, and then gave him the skill he needed to be able to use what he knows to the max limit, and skills that he got was based on his current knowledge of basic measurement and basic design. Since he already got enough points, he chooses both of them. The first skill was the basic measurement, and this skill helped him measure using just his eyes, and the second skill was basic design. It allowed him to draw and design anything in his head very quickly. These skills will help him a lot to build what he wants, but still, if only he had the knowledge in making heavy machinery, or the ability to summon them. The system answers him quickly by saying that it's possible to summon. Lloyd was excited after hearing this, but the system shows him a window of a random draw for a fantasy species. It requires a 50 RP and he only has 1 RP left. If he was right, a fantasy species can be anything he can think of. They will be as useful as the heavy machinery. His goal now is to get as much RP as he can get to be able to summon a fantasy species. While he was walking, he met the loan shark guys. One of them is called Meatloaf and the other is called Shayla. They walked through him without greeting Baron's son. This is disrespectful, but he quickly remembered Then they went in the Baron's office and disrespected him. They told him that he had 5 days left to pay his debt, and if he keeps doing that they will not sit still any longer. Lloyd was listening to them while they were disrespecting his father. What great timing for him, it's his time to show up. Meatloaf told him that if he can't pay him back he knows a good place where he can sell his wife and maids. The Baron didn't speak out of shock, but Lloyd walked into them and asked him, "Do you think it's all right to have no manner just because you're a creditor?" He quickly gets away from him and then asks, "Who the hell are you?" Once he knew that he was an idiot's son, he calmed down and told him to not interfere with adult talking, and right before he finished his sentence, Lloyd asked him to see his invitation letter first. Both of them were confused about what he was saying. Lloyd then told them one of the kingdom's noble laws: every noble in the kingdom has the right to protect their rights and interests, and entering a noble's mansion without an invitation is equivalent to trespassing. Both of them become angry. They never heard such a law like that in their life. Lloyd tells them it's fine to let's check it. Then he called Javier, and then he entered the office. Lloyd then told Javier to cut off the trespasser's arm. They called him crazy and asked him if he was trying to go to court or something. While he doesn't mind going to court to check this law and see whose side the court will take, they almost pissed themselves. They quickly ran away from the office. His father was scared about what they did. This will not help to calm things down. Lloyd put a bag of money and said that this money was not enough, but it will last for some time. His father told him to not extort money from people. Javier told him to not to be worried, he will keep a close eye on him. The Baron trusts Javier's judgment and decides to see what will happen. While they were walking, Javier asks Lloyd how an ignorant person like him knows about the law, and of course he read it in the novel. After the couple's death, the two loan sharks wanted to dig for their corpses and sell them, and that time he said that law he slices the two people's hands. Knowing the contents of the novel is a great benefit, and this is the moment that he's been waiting for. The Baron impression has increased, so he now has 61 RP points as he planned. He is now able to afford one of the fantasy species. When the night came, Lloyd went outside to use random draw. He pressed the button and let the magic begin. Some gears show up. It was amazing, but there is only one problem. The spell was too small and it made some nasty noise. Right then a cute little animal came out of it. Lloyd was disappointed. He imagined a strong beast or dragon, but he got a cute little hamster. What a waste for his RP points. It's a total failure. The hamster was devastated after hearing this. He tried to talk with Lloyd and somehow Lloyd was able to understand what he was saying. He tells him that he has some wonderful abilities. Lloyd then asked him to show his abilities. The hamster then chews a little and spits outside some paper. It was a manual. The manual told him to take care of it with love. With some sunflower seed he will change his build. The red seed will make it huge, and the blue seed will make it small, and the effect will last for 12 hours. Lloyd decided to check it, and gave him a red seed, and once he eats it the effect starts. He has become 5 meters tall, no, at least 10 meters. Humongous hamster. The hamster was looking at Lloyd with arrogance. It had 3 skills in total: the excavation, the ground hardening, and at last cheek pa. Amazing, the heavy machinery problem has been solved. Lloyd just can't show the creature around. The people will get suspicious. He must bring a summoner's book and pretend to be a genius summoner. What a genius! He is so smart that he is going crazy. The only problem now he has to solve is the worker problem. Lloyd gathered the Baron army. He was angry. They were getting paid for doing nothing, and he will make sure to use them all. Lloyd ordered them to listen to him properly. They are soldiers in the army and their job is to listen and do what they are told. They will do everything to revive the estate. It's the heated room construction. For now, they have to move this soil to the construction site. The look on the soldiers was despicable. No one took him seriously, but he already expected that. But soon he got interrupted. It was the Barony's senior knight Newman. He asks Lloyd what is he doing by taking his soldiers with him. As Lloyd has planned, there are 3 knights in this estate. The first of them is Newman, and the second is Bayern, and at last the novel's protagonist, Xavier Azrahan. When things started to collapse, this person was the first one to betray and leave the Baron. Not only that he sold information about the Baron to the swindlers, he is the one who has a lot of debt to pay. How can this piece of crap can be a senior knight? Newman told Lloyd that he couldn't believe that he made his soldiers do this dirty work. He can't accept that as a senior knight, while Lloyd tells him that he got the Baron's permission. Newman said to him that he can't understand how he fools the Baron. But looking at your past, it looks like you are using this military for your personal purposes. Newman asked Lloyd if he was wrong about it, to which Lloyd replies, "No, you are absolutely right about getting hit by him." Newman was crushing his teeth with anger. Lloyd uses his shovel and splashes a bunch of dirt on the senior knight. All the soldiers were shocked. Even Newman didn't believe what just happened. He became boiling with anger. Did he just try to insult a knight? But Lloyd was pretending not to hear him and mocking him even more. Lloyd took his shovel and pointed it at Newman and said, "Let's go for a duel." Newman had enough from him, and he will regret this. He will absolutely smoke him out. Lloyd will have a duel with Newman in 1 month. He asks Habiel to teach him how to use a sword, but is instantly rejected. He reasons him that his job is only to watch over him. Also, if he learns how to use a sword, others around him might get in a bigger danger. He is interrupted by Lloyd, who asks him if he was sure even if he gives him the cure to his insomnia. Habiel is shocked as nobody knows about it. We come to know that he has already read and hence knows everything from the novel. He explains that as Habiel is on the verge of transitioning from being a high-level sword expert to a sword master, his senses have so sharpened that he cannot sleep. Javier lets out a sigh and accepts the deal, and mocks him as he was so sure that he will fail, as he has tried everything to cure his insomnia but had always failed. Lloyd successfully cures his insomnia, and now it's his turn to return the favor by teaching him sword fighting. The next morning, Habiel orders him to run 50 laps, and without any complaint, he starts to run, which shocks Javier. As he runs, he mocks him as he thought that he would be not able to do it, and then he will say you don't have what it takes and refuse to teach him. Habiel is shocked. While he runs, the memories of his hard work from his past life pop into his mind and motivate him. Now Habiel is impressed and is ready to teach him. A screen pops up saying, "Your approval rating by Javier increased by 1 point." We see the Baron having a chat with the Newman. The Baron asks him to go easy on Lloyd as he was the heir of the estate. He accepts it but has already plotted to kill Lloyd, and if the Baron tries to interrupt him, he was also ready to kill both Baron and Baroness and disguise it as a suicide. 1 month has passed, and we see Newman and Lloyd standing face to face for a duel. The Baron was really worried for his son. Newman asks him if he was ready. He swings his shovel and puts it on his shoulders and has a grin on his face and is ready for a fight. The Baron was disappointed in Lloyd and thought that it was all a joke in the end. Javier assures him that it was not a joke, and Lloyd was serious about it. He had trained himself very hard in the past 1 month, helped the village engineers to build the Andal system, and then practiced sword work until he went to sleep. He was sure that this time it was not a prank and Master Lloyd is really serious about the duel. The Baron signals to start the duel, and Lloyd is ready in a lackluster pose with his iron shovel in his hand. Newman charges him, but Lloyd easily manages to dodge the attack by using his iron shovel. Newman is agitated and attacks him again, saying luck doesn't work twice. But this time too, Lloyd is able to deflect his attack. His movements are so efficient that Javier is shocked. Lloyd points his shovel toward him and remembers the days when he was having his bayonet training in the Korean military. He was able to use the shovel as a shield, and as well to strike the opponent. He uses the shovel as a pogo stick to mock Newman. Javier was confused as he thought it was a joke after all or not. Lloyd now switches to offensive and was able to push Newman back by using his skill expansion shoveling. Newman was frustrated and left with no choice, and summons his Manhwa, and mocks Lloyd by raising his sword high. Javier thinks, for someone without skills, it takes over 10 years to summon the Manhwa. It would be impossible for someone like Master Lloyd to block the attack, which was enhanced with mana in it. Newman swings his sword, thinking that he will be able to crack the blade and behead Lloyd with the attack. Everybody was miserable, but somehow Lloyd manages to block the attack without taking damage. It felt to Newman as if all his strength was leaving his body and being absorbed by the shovel. And Javier reveals that he used the mana conjuring skill, the Azrahan core technique. Newman figures this out in no time and retreats, but is instantly hit in the face by Lloyd with his shovel. Due to this, his tooth is sent flying into the sky. Lloyd then hits him on the head and brings him down. Everybody was unable to believe that Lloyd has won the duel until the Baron hesitantly announces Lloyd as the winner. Newman was unable to believe it and was in shock, lying on the ground. Lloyd starts to beat him mercilessly. The Baron shouts to stop Lloyd, but still, Lloyd beats him into a pulp. The guards try to get hold of him and stop him for a moment, but as soon as the guards let him go, he starts to beat him again. Javier notices his calm face and speculates that Lyad is hitting him precisely to hurt every single part of his body. It was as if he knew everything already. 15 days before the duel, Lloyd asked Javier to teach him the Azrahan core technique. Javier was shocked upon hearing this. The Azrahan core technique is the core method that draws a man from the surroundings, not just the mana that is conjured by the individual. Javier was skeptical about him knowing the technique as he himself was not able to master the skill. Lyad, with a brazen face, tells him that he talked about it in his sleep. Javier thinks of it but rejects to teach him the technique. Lyad tells him that he could help him to complete the unfinished technique, and in return, he has to teach him the technique. Javier is confused due to his arrogance. Lloyd explains the technique to him. Javier then tries to perfect the Azrahan technique and he was able to perform it as Lyad instructed. His approval rating by Javier increases by 5 points. Lyad then learns the skill of absorbing mana from his touch that day. And today he used the same skill to defeat Newman easily. The Baron yells at him and tries to stop him. Lloyd asks the Baron to look under the cloth and then he should try to stop him. As he uncovers the table, he was shocked to find the letter. Lloyd tells him that his knight Newman has defrauded him in a real estate deal. Newman was shocked as he hid the letter in the wall. Lyad smirks, and as he already knew this from the novel, he had Padong to find these letters. The Baron was frustrated and was still recovering from the shock. Lyad knew that the Baron was too kind to handle this situation by himself, so he suggests the Baron drop a mouse on his head, and if he was hurt by the mouse then he must be exiled from the land. Otherwise, demote him to a foot soldier and give him the opportunity to repent. Everybody present there was in shock and thought Newman is a powerful knight and will never be hurt by the mouse. The Baron accepts this and asks Newman if he had any objections. Newman says that he was grateful for the mercy. Lyad sees through his scheme of betraying the Baron again and tells him that it was good to see him smile, but it will be his last time to do so. Newman was not able to understand what he meant. Lyad feeds Padong the red seed and throws him in the air. And as Padong eats the seed, he becomes huge and everybody was shocked due to this. Newman was scared as the mighty Padong falls on him. And Lyad announces the exile for him. After some days, Padong is seen digging in the road in the estate. Javier was confused and Lyad tells him that he was using Padong to carve a road in there. He was trying to the Great Appian Way just as the Romans made. He was going to build it from the Baron's mansion to the base of the eastern mountains. And tells him not to worry as he will see it soon when he will there land on the map. Javier asks Lyad, from where he gained so much knowledge, learned to summon the creature out of nowhere, and asks him if he really was Lyad. The system alerts him that Javier has suspicions about his identity. And he was scared as he read about Javier in the novel and knew that if he finds out about someone else who has stolen the Lord's son's body, he might use his sword and kill him. Lyad has saved his special skill for the times like this. He uses his special skill stubborn insistence and speedy topic change on Javier, and was able to get rid of the suspicion this time. He asks Sir Byron to look at the road work while he was away. Javier insists to come along with him and asks him where were they heading. He replies somewhere far, as he has to take back some money which was stolen from them. In the small border town, Ladinia, we see the real estate conman, Tords, lost all his money. In gambling, the guy beside him tells him that if he can't pay his salary then he will leave him. Tords is worried about it. As he was thinking, Lyad enters the room with a bang. Tords was not able to identify him as he only knew his name and not his face. Lyad introduces him, and Tords is really frightened and tries to escape with the help of his knight. He breaks the wall and jumps on the road, only to find Javier waiting for them to arrive. Javier swings his sword and asks the knight to leave Tords alone and leave the site. If he resists, he will see him as a co-conspirator and kill him. The knight uses his gravitational magic on Javier. Lyad smirks as he knows that Javier was stronger than the knight. He attacks Javier with a mana blast and is blocked by Javier. He uses more of his gravitational magic on him, and due to this, he was on the edge with him. But he uses his triple circle mana heart and erases the magic, which terrifies the mage, and he immediately leaves the place. Now that Tords is alone, Javier was going to kill him, but he was intercepted by Lyad as he didn't want to kill Tords, but uses him for some other work. He was tied down on a chair, and Lyad and Javier starts to interrogate him. Lyad tells Torres to stop being scared because he didn't want to behead him but to use him for some other work. Lyad asks him to hand over the Baron's remaining assets. Torres said he will do it only if he will forgive him. He tells him that if he has to do it without any resistance but it had to be forgiven, then he has to do something else, and slides in an unknown contract. Torres asks him what the contract was. It was a normal employment contract with a paid salary, but he has to repay 80% of the salary back to the Baron for the money he defrauded them. And after 520 years he will be able to repay all the debts he has. Which frightened him even more. Lyad's plan was to use him to make money for his entire life. Torres tries to resist signing the contract, but Lyad threatens him that if he does not sign the contract they will have to go to court. He was left with no option but to sign the contract. A few days later at the Frontera Barony, Lyad was in need of workers for his future projects. There were many people interested in it. Lyad asks Javier why were there so many people as they hated him in the past. Javier tells him that after the delivery of affordable Andal systems, took care of the traitor and also called upon a summon for his help, and now he was being considered a trustworthy, talented man by the people. The people really saw him as a hero. As he was talking to the man, he asks Lyad if they can accept an order from the neighboring Lacona land as his relative wanted the Andal system. Finally, it was his time to execute his final plan and puts on a shitty face as per Javier. And now Javier notices that's why he was constructing the main road to the mountain and provided Andal systems to the people and took a loss on himself. Both of them were standing on the top of the hill and saw the mountains. Lyad tells Javier that soon the mountains will be stripped bare. Javier asks him why was that. Lyad tells him that it requires an astronomical amount of fuel for the Andal systems, and these trees will not be enough. And he was laying down the Appian Way just to get to the eastern mountains, as there was a mine from where he was supposed to get some black coal to use as fuel. And then he can sell the coal at a very high profit and promises a very small discount for the people of their land. Javier was thinking that he was so sneaky and devious. Lyad tells him that he has to be that way because they have a huge debt to be paid. Javier realizes that was the best way to get able to pay the debts, but the black coal mine was just not possible for them to mine coal from as it would collapse due to the weak bedrock. But Lyad assures him that he can do it. He tells him that they will use the shield tunneling method and was really excited about it. Javier was confused as he was unaware of the shield tunneling method and never heard of it. But he still decides to trust him. He was preparing for the tunnel excavation but thinks he should have had a more cool skill as the current skills were too slow. But he was able to upgrade them with the help of the 693 RP points he got from the Newman incident. He was now ready to test the skills in reality. He was at the site of the black coal mine, where he uses his new skill, optional skill intermediate surveying, GPR scanning. With the help of these skills he was able to see up to 5 meters in depth. But the problem was it was too slow with the help of his current manpower to dig the tunnel. He thinks of using Podon, but he was sick from constructing the road and all the long-distance jobs. Even if he recovers it, will be risky to let him dig the tunnel due to his humongous size. He thinks for some time and finally realizes something. He uses the summon skill to get a new beast. As always, the small portal appears in front of him, and from it appears a snake-like creature. At first, Lloyd thought that the creature was meant to be poisonous and is used to assassinate people. He thought that it was pretty useless for him to have it, but thinks of Podong as he was at first thought was useless, but he had his abilities. He asked the creature if it had any special skill to show him. A few weeks later, after a few weeks in the mine, we see Bangul, which was used as the main machine to excavate into the mine. First, it would eat the dirt and make a path and shoots the steel dung as the excretion after digestion of the mud it ate. When it launches the turds, they were slashed by Javier into uniform lengths, and the pieces were further used in the construction of the tunnel by the remaining workers. Lyad was dizzy due to lack of oxygen in the tunnel, but thanks to the pipes they installed earlier which gave enough oxygen supply to work. Javier tells Lloyd to rest for some time and head out of the tunnel, but he refuses as he says that he is in charge of the tunnel and he is supposed to look after the work of it. He uses his skill to scan further in the tunnel and finally finds the black coal. He cheers everyone and thanks Bangul for the help as due to her help the work was completed 10 times faster than what was expected. He orders everyone as we reach the coal layer, they have to dismantle the shield and enlarge the mining space, and says it was still dangerous here and asks them to be careful. As he was completing his sentence, the tunnel starts to crumble from where they left. He uses his GPR scanning skill and tries to see what caused it. He saw a hole that was not present before. The hole gets bigger, and out of nowhere huge ants start to attack Lloyd, but he is saved by Javier. Lloyd gets up and kills the ant with his shovel. He thought it was over, but he realized that ants live in colonies and the hole becomes even bigger, and a huge number of ants were seen by them. Javier tries to hold the ants for some time until the workers evacuated, but he was simply outnumbered as there were around 200,000 ants he had to hold back. Javier slaps him so that he was able to take action as he thought that he was consumed by panic. Lloyd tries to figure it out, and an idea pops into his mind. He takes a torch and asks Javier to go into the nest. Javier thought that it was a ridiculous idea, as if they went to their death is sure. But still, he trusts Lloyd and enters the nest. At the Baron's mansion, he comes to know about the incident and immediately orders all the soldiers to get ready to fight. Here, both of them are inside the ant nest, and Javier is able to hold them for some time and is now getting tired due to the lack of oxygen in the tunnel. He was using his GPR scanning skill to find something while Javier was getting tired by the minute. He gets what he was searching for and starts to dig at the place, while Javier defended him. Out of nowhere there is a large roar that shook the whole place. It was the huge queen ant. Javier activates his man-heart and reaches his max potential to defend Lloyd. And he was busy digging the ground. Finally, he hits the camber where there was methane gas present. He immediately asks Javier to run to the exit and starts running. Javier too, on his command, starts to run to the exit. As they reach the exit, Lloyd throws the torn into the nest, which resulted in the explosion of the whole nest, as there was methane gas present there. The queen was able to escape just her head from the nest, and everything was decimated into ashes. Javier protects Lloyd by acting as a human shield and taking the damage from the explosion. Outside the tunnel, there was a huge explosion heard by the Baron and soldiers who were there to save Lloyd. The Baron thinks that his son might be dead and tries to go in, but the Night Baron stops him from going inside. Lloyd has now recovered from the shock and tries to look for an escape route, as they were now trapped in the mine. He wakes up all dizzy. The system tells him that he was running out of oxygen and he has to escape as soon as possible. He uses the skill to see if he had any escape routes. The system showed how much time he left to escape. He immediately starts to dig the wall using his shovel, as Javier and Bangul have taken damage from the explosion, and there is nothing he can do but to dig the wall and make an escape. Javier was touched by his determination, and his approval rating for him increased by 6 points. The oxygen levels were now really low, and he was unable to breathe. He starts to upgrade his skills and scans all his pre-existing skills, and combines them to upgrade the Azrahan core technique. He upgrades the skill to level 10, and due to this, he was able to unlock Azrahan core technique double circle. He has now drained all his RP, and the system informs him that his mana amplification is 200%. He uses his other skill Energizer and Latent Power, which will help him to move for 10 minutes without any fatigue, and triple his mana amplification for 20 seconds. After activating the skills, he without and waste of time starts to dig an escape route. The oxygen in their camber was getting lower and lower. He finally sees the exit at 3 meters. His skill Energizer has exceeded the 10-minute mark. But he still had the other skill, Latent Power Surge. He gets up and starts to dig the tunnel, hoping to reach the exit as soon as possible. It was just 30 centimeters away, and the time limit of the skill was just 20 seconds left. But the oxygen there has been depleted fully, and due to this he falls on the ground and thinks that he will be dead soon. The wall in front of him starts to crumble. It was Padong who had come to his rescue. Finally, the room is full of oxygen, and he gets up. Here, the Baron and his soldiers are on the way to rescue Lloyd and Javier. As they walk into the tunnel, he sees Lloyd carrying Javier on his back. The Baron starts to run towards them and catches him as he was falling to the ground. Finally, the night was over and a new day begins in the barony. Everybody was talking about Lloyd. They thought of him as their hero. In the mansion, we see Lloyd lying on his bed, and beside him is Javier waiting for him to be awake. Lloyd opens his eyes, and the system notifies him that all of Frontera's subjects were deeply moved by his heroic act. and for this great achievement, he had been awarded a large amount of RP. He was very happy to receive the award and puts on an evil smile. Now that the tunnel is secure for extraction of coal, the soldiers have made it even easier to transport the coal by building a rail and upgraded the infrastructure of the overall tunnel. Lloyd and Javier are in the tunnel. Everybody was grateful for his deeds and look up to him as their ideal. Even thought it was good, he still feels it a bit uncomfortable. Javier and Lloyd are making sure that safety is assured for the people to mine coal. While on the way, Javier asks him why was he doing such a dangerous work in person as he could order his soldiers to do the work. He replied that he is the man in charge and he has to see to his man's safety. To do so he has to be in the front line. And also nobody would complain anything when he gets most of the money. Javier was not able to identify whether he was a good or a bad person, so his approval rating towards Lloyd didn't rise. They walk for some time until they reach the end of the tunnel, and were about to go back. But Lloyd uses his skill to scan is there anything behind the wall, and starts to dig the wall using his shovel. Javier was a bit skeptical about it, but Lloyd remains firm and digs a hole through the wall, and reaches the other side. He finds a huge, muscular orc and the food stock collected by the ants. Javier tells him that the wild ants paralyze their prey and store them for their next meal. Lloyd had his SUS face on him and thinks of it as an opportunity for something. At the mansion, the orc is now in good condition and awake. He introduces himself as Arash and thanks Lloyd for saving his life. And he asks him to tell him what does he want, and he will fulfill his wish. Lloyd is excited and he thinks it as an opportunity. Lloyd with a cheerful face asks him to give 120 orcs to work in the mine. The orc Arash rejects it instantly. Lloyd asks him why it was not possible as he saved his life. The orc replies that the mighty orcs only take orders from the Waris they respect and not anybody can order them. Lloyd thinks of a scheme and he knew that the orcs have to bring the head of the wild ants for their coming of age ceremony, so Lloyd congratulates him for completing the ceremony. But the orc Arash was sad as he was not able to get a single ant. Arash was not able to remember anything. Lloyd with a very serious face tells him that due to his help Lloyd was able to deliver the final blow and defeat the weekend ant. And tells him that the wild ant was caught by both of them. And after the tricking him he was finally able to get the promise of 120 orcs from Arash the orc. Lloyd and the orc Arash have finally reached their destination 1 week later, at the village of the Sand and Steel tribe of wild orcs. They were in front of the tribe leader. He rejects to give them 120 orcs instantly. Lloyd was confused why did they change their mind again. But Lloyd thinks for a while and asks the orc leader, what if the meat could last for multiple days without spoiling? Due to this the orcs will not have to hunt in 3 shifts a day and only then they can lend him worker orcs. The leader orc tells him, if it was the way but they cannot risk muscle loss. Lloyd firmly tells him that he will make such device for them. He tricks him to make a deal to get 120 orcs to work under him. After a few weeks, they finally reach the Sand and Steel tribe of wild orcs. The father and son met and had a heart-touching meeting, which shook the whole place. Arosh shows his father, the chief head of the humongous head of the queen ant. The whole tribe was very happy and the chief announces that they will have the celebration there. Everybody starts to squat with some artifacts as weights. Lloyd notices the artifacts and is shocked to see the priceless artifacts being used by the orcs as a workout tool. Lloyd explains his plan to Javier. He says that he will make a refrigerator for the orcs and in return get the 120 worker orcs as well the priceless artifacts. Javier asks him what is a refrigerator as he was unaware of that word. Lloyd tells him that it is a container that is used to preserve food. Javier now is skeptical and asks him how he knows about such stuff. Lloyd uses his skill and changes the topic. They were in front of a mountain, and he asks Javier to make a refrigerator. They will need the stone which is made from granite, and they are present in the mountain. Javier tells him that it seems like the rock will take a long time to come out, and that is why he brought him here. Lloyd recalls the chapter from the novel, where a city called Nariman is trapped within a powerful, evil magic force field. Inside the city, there were many refugees that Javier needed to save. By then Javier had already attained sword master status and could form up to 4 mana circles. But he could do nothing as he was stuck outside the wall. His wild desire to save the people in danger from the evil magic made him adapt and create a new skill using the mana circle, 1 circle to protect the man heart, and the other 3 were used as mana blasts from his sword. And from then on, this technique became one of the signature moves of Javier from the novel. Lloyd puts on a solid face and explains the skill to Javier. He was once again skeptical of Lloyd and asks him about it, but Lloyd uses his skills and turns around the topic. Lloyd asks him to try to perform the skill, and Javier then tries to perform the skill as described by Lloyd. He pokes his sword into the rock and a huge explosion takes place. Lloyd didn't know that he could master this skill that easily. As the smoke clears out, he saw that Javier is half naked as his clothes were torn off in the blast. He thanks Lloyd indirectly and asks him if this skill will help him. Lloyd's approval rating has increased by 3 points, and he earns a small amount of RP points. After that, the construction went at a lightning pace. Javier sliced up blocks of granite while Padong transported them. The orcs and the human soldier have also joined the construction. With the help of the orcs, they will be able to build the refrigerator smoothly. Now, Lloyd has to arrange ice and some insulation to complete the build. He had already sent some men to fetch the insulating materials, but it has been 5 days since they left the place and didn't return. Javier speculates that something must have happened with the men, and Lloyd immediately gets up and asks Javier to come with him in search of his men. Javier stops him and tells him that he will be more than enough to take care of this matter, but Lloyd tells him he was the man in charge and he was the only one who was responsible for his workers. Javier then accepts Lloyd to come with him. Both of them were searching the traces of the men in the desert, and Lloyd finds a hand glove and some straw that was needed for insulation. Javier informs Lloyd that he senses some unnatural mana flow in that region. Lloyd tries to remember the episode from the novel, where such incidents have occurred, and something clicks in his mind. He immediately orders Javier to come with him immediately, or else it would be too late, and the men have already died. They follow the trail of the straws and they reach the valley where the Lapellin's dungeon. The place that Javier tackles early on in the novel. This is the hideout of the dark sorcerer named Lapellin. Lloyd was agitated about him violating his property. Javier tries to get further ahead in the dungeon, but is instantly met by a trap. Lloyd quickly grabs Javier and dodges the booby attack. Lloyd mocks Javier as he was a knight, and is still unable to grasp that there were booby traps placed. In the novel, Javier gets caught up in the first trap and enters the dungeon covered in wounds. But he was able to get inside the dungeon without getting hurt any further due to his quick adaptability. He was able to sense the booby traps. Now, too, he was able to sense the traps and guides Lloyd into the dungeon safely. Javier was a bit skeptical of Lloyd and realizes that he already knows the future events that are going to occur. The evil sorcerer senses that someone has breached the dungeon and is heading his way, and thinks the intruders are dead, as he had already placed many booby traps to protect the dungeon. It seemed as if he was doing an experiment on the people he abducted, and announces that the preparations were complete and opened the door. He grabs one of the soldiers and drags him out of the room, and throws him into a ritual star. He was ready to sacrifice the soldier with the sickle soaked in blood for 100 days and was about to kill him, but he is interrupted by Lloyd. The evil sorcerer quickly uses his magic and summons a huge wall between them. Lloyd and Javier are stuck in the chamber, and the sorcerer uses his magic and fills the chamber with sleeping gas. Javier was immune to the gas due to his insomnia. Lloyd holds his breath and uses his energizer skill, which enabled him to get past the wall from underneath it using his shovel. And Javier uses his mana blast skill to destroy the ground and enter the other side. The sorcerer was scared as he saw Lloyd coming out of the ground like an undead filled with rage and hatred. He uses his powers and summons a huge creature. He was pretty confident that this will be enough to take care of both of them. Javier leaps onto him and uses his new skill Mana Blast Slash and slices the creature from the middle. Lloyd was shocked by seeing this, as there is no skill mentioned in the book that Javier just used right now. Lloyd reaches out to the evil sorcerer and asks him how is he supposed to repay his loss. The evil sorcerer bows down and asks him to forgive him. He tells him to take anything of the valuable tools of sorcery he has in the cave. The evil sorcerer tells Lloyd his emotional story, and he just wanted to resurrect his dead wife and child who were killed by his seniors just to bully him. Lloyd stops his sentimental talks and asks him if his family was resurrected, what would they say about the hundreds of families he killed? Lloyd tells him that he has now become a serial killer, but he forgives him and tells him that he will not be spared again if he finds out that he has hurt anyone. The sorcerer was grateful and thanked Lloyd for his mercy. Lloyd recalls the novel chapter and knew that the evil sorcerer will try to backstab them. As he tries to attack them from behind, Javier immediately beheads him. In the past life too, Lloyd was bullied by his seniors, but one day he lost his cool and then started to beat his senior even though he knew that he will be screwed and would also get fired from the job. But from then the senior never tries to again pick on him. That time he realized that there are clearly times when violence must be stopped with violence. And today they were able to get out of the dungeon with violence too. They once again started their journey back to the tribe. The workers were tired of the work. Lloyd realizes it and takes their sack and carried it on their back. All the workers were touched due to his kindness. The rescued soldiers have been moved by his actions, and through their words, this incident will soon spread far and ahead. They were finally able to reach the tribe and finish the incomplete build. Arash inspects the room and realizes that it was not cool enough, and if they store the meat there it will get spoilt easily. Lloyd tells him that he will soon complete the build and for it he needs ice. Arash tells him that there is no ice in the hot wasteland. Lloyd assures him that they will have to make it themselves. Arash was skeptical and thinks Lloyd is some con man. But he tries to calm him down as Lloyd was the one who saved his life and he must not think of him as a bad man. He leaves the room and promises to help them if they need any. Javier asks him who are they supposed to make ice with. Lloyd was really stressed out and asks him what they can do. Javier asks Lloyd if he was trying to defraud the orcs. Lloyd calms him down and asks him, do you know what unsuccessful people have in common? They are unsuccessful because they try to give an excuse. But people who are successful start things and then figure them out somehow. And that is the mind of an entrepreneur. Javier was unable to understand what he said and keeps silent. In the night, Lloyd was alone, trying to figure out how he was supposed to make ice. And finally, he understands that by using Ezrahan core technique he could absorb the hot mana from the water. There is only cold mana left which will automatically form ice. Javier was sure that he was too reckless and irresponsible to pull such a stunt. Lloyd then prepared the huge ice molds and fills them with water with the help of Padong and Bangul, and then he tests his theory which results in a huge success. After a few days, the tribe leader and Arosh were surprised at how cool the temperature is inside the room. And they were very happy that they will not have to worry about the meat getting spoiled. Lloyd gave Javier a cocky look to which Javier replied it is what it is. And finally, Lloyd and Javier are finally to get 120 orc workers. The leader of the tribe was very grateful and vowed to him that from that moment Frontera family and the tribe of Sand and Steel will be blood brothers, and strike an amazing pose with the tribe. He announces that the enemies of the Frontera will be considered the enemy of the tribe too. The orcs have now accepted Lloyd as their true friend, and the orcs' approval rating for him has risen. Lloyd was too pumped up and is really happy about the outcome. After a long journey, Lloyd has finally returned to the barony, but this time he has huge and muscular orcs on his side. The townspeople were frightened when they saw the orcs entering their town with Lloyd. The Baron and Baroness are also scared as a huge platoon of orcs are standing in front of their mansion. After everything was over, Lloyd is inspecting the artifacts he got from the wicked sorcerer's dungeon. As he was inspecting the items he found a book and is shocked when he reads it. He quickly gets up and grabs his coat and leaves the place as he was heading to the mine. He gets into the mine and searches for Tords. The poor Tords was not in good condition and seemed as if he was really tired of the work. But Lloyd is there to save him from all this hard work and tells him that he can use Tords as a test subject for evil magic and make him his ghoul, and control him for the rest of the 520 years of debt he owes. Lloyd was very excited about the experiment, but Tords does not reciprocate the same excitement, so Lloyd puts on a serious look, due to which Tords has to agree with the contract. Lloyd leaves the mine with a cheerful face and wishes Tords good luck. Later that day, the maid informs Lloyd that there were some guests, Mr. Meatloaf and Mr. Shillef, who came there to visit the Baron. It seems as if Lloyd was ready for them to arrive. The Baron and the guests were sitting in the room discussing the debt that the Baron owes them. Mr. Meatloaf asks him to give the rights to the mine and in return, he will give him some discount on his debt. They were trying to trick the Baron once more. There is a knock on the door, and as the door opens, Lloyd was there with a very happy expression on his face. The Meatloaf guy immediately shows him the official invitation and tells him that this time he was prepared so that he can't make them leave just like the last time without getting their money back. Lloyd tells him that he did not come there to threaten them, but he overheard the amazing offer they gave to the Baron and asks them if he can suggest an offer of his own. The meatloaf guy tells him that he did not care about his deal, but Lloyd still tells him his offer, which infuriated him. Lloyd with a cheerful face tells him that the two of them can give crappy deals and he can't. Well, that makes me angry. And the orc Arash steps in, and is agitated, and asks who dares to anger his brother. Both of them were scared to see the giant orc. The orc Arash tells them if anyone tries to cause trouble for their Frontera brother, they shall be crushed by the full force of the Sand and Steel tribe. Lloyd calms him and says that there is nobody who'd anger him, and says he just has a loud voice. Both of them were terrified, and Lloyd asked them about his offer, and if they did refuse his offer they might hurt his feelings. They have no choice but to accept the offer, and both of them run for their lives. Lloyd assured the Baron that they will be able to repay the debts soon as all the businesses are going smoothly. But there is a huge problem they will have to face. That is the food for the orcs, as they eat 10 times the food, and if this continues they might gain more debt, which terrifies the Baron. The orcs were very good at mining, just as Lloyd thought. They worked really hard and didn't even care for the wages, they just need to get their bellies full. Lloyd was thinking about where he can get money to get meat for the orcs. The Baron and Lloyd were discussing this issue. Lloyd tells him they have to raise the taxes exponentially so that they can get more money to feed the orcs. The Baron denies this and says that the people are already in a state where they have little to no money. Lloyd tells him that then they have to make opportunities for the people to make even more money. He suggests to the Baron that they should use the forgotten northern lands by transforming the Marteai's wetlands into farmland. And then they can give the land to the people to farm, and then they can generate enough revenue, and that's how they can pay more taxes. Lloyd and Javier are on a visit to the wetlands. Javier tells him that these lands have no use as they have been abandoned for hundreds of years. Lloyd tells him that he has the plan to make the place habitable for farming soon, but in reality, he had no such plan. Lloyd has been researching how he can drain the water even when it rains so that the water level will be maintained for farming. He was working tirelessly, and now it has been 21 days since he started to research the drainage system. Javier asks the Baron if he can stop him. The Baron denies it, and tells him that he does not want to become an obstacle in his way. Baron Frontera's approval rating for Lloyd has increased. After a few days, finally, Lloyd was able to get the results he wanted and really happy, and thinks that he has found a way to get more tax money, and falls to the ground all tired. The screen tells him that he has unlocked a new skill with which he can use the data obtained from surveying the land and create a virtual simulation. He was visibly angry at the system for giving him such a vital skill after the work he put into it doing everything manually. It would be much easier if he just had this skill from the start. He stands up and asks both Padong and Bangul, "Are you guys ready to meet a new friend?" A new day starts, and Lloyd is ready for his new project. The Wetland Proclamation. He asks both of them to help him to get rid of the water. Both of them were worried, but Lloyd calms them and tells them that he knows it would be impossible for just both of them to do the work. And that's why he is going to summon a new creature using his RP points. He presses the button, and once again the gears start to appear, making some nasty noises, out of which a yellow creature jumps straight to his face and falls on the ground. He discovers that the creature is like a hippo. Both Padong and Bangul were really happy to see the creature, and all three of them started to dance. Lloyd interrupts them and asks him to give them the instruction manual. The creature spits the manual just like both of them. Hamon did not get bigger or smaller by eating sunflower seeds and thought that it was a dud this time, and is going to summon another creature. But the screen informs him that the summons game can be played once per day. Due to this, Hamon is emotionally hurt, which infuriated Bangul and Padong, and they started a strike. So Lloyd asks Hamon to show what his skill was. Hamon has the one-shot skill, with which he can chug some water in one shot, as much as his stomach can hold. Lloyd is skeptical, but Hamon insists on using his skill and started to drink water from the pond. As he started to drink the water, his size began to increase. Lloyd was shocked, as now Hamon is now humongous like a mountain. And he emptied the whole puddle, which amused Lloyd, as with his help he can now get rid of the water in a few days. Both Bangul and Padong gave a smug look. Lloyd asked the system if he really got the random summons. Every time he uses summons he got a suitable creature for the work. The system tells him that he maybe got lucky random summons as his special skill, or maybe not. Hamon asks Lloyd if he wanted him to drink more water. Lloyd was surprised and tells him that he can drink to his heart's content because tomorrow is the day they will start reclaiming the Marteai's wetlands. All the soldiers were frightened when they first saw the humongous Hamon and his ability to drink insane amounts of water. Everybody settled after a few days. The working method was, first, Hamon will remove all the water from the wetlands, then the soldiers remove any weeds or debris from the exposed ground. After that, fill the area with sand to make a sandbank while Padong packs down the earth. To get water out of the deepest parts of the soil, they use bamboo stalks as straw and have Hamon one shot at all. After this, they build a level using his upgraded simulation skill. And finally, after 10 days of this, they have completed a sector. Lloyd is all cheered up and announces a bonus party after the work is completed, which spreads joy among the soldiers. After a few more days, Javier was very happy that the wetlands were completely transformed into farmlands. He also helped with the work, but he still about his duties that he was a knight, and now he is being used as a worker. Lloyd runs toward him calling his name. Lloyd asks him to plant the seeds in the small part over there. Javier tries to deny it, but Lloyd tells him that it was to get rid of the pest, and eventually, Javier was on his work and thinks next time he will surely deny everything and not fall for this trick again. Everybody was really happy and thought that it was simply a miracle that changed Lloyd from a drunkard to the person he was now. The system informs him that the people in the barony felt deep awe and respect for the miracle he performed, and for this great achievement, he has been awarded with a large amount of bonus RP. Lloyd is satisfied with it. After a few more days, the plants have fully developed in the care of Knight Javier, and it seemed as if Javier is really enjoying the stuff. Lloyd tells him that now the land is fully developed, he can build a water wheel, and it's all set. Javier did not know what a water wheel was and asked him his doubt. Lloyd replied it is something which can be used to remove water when the rain comes, otherwise the land will be underwater. They hear some noise in the background and are confused to see some men on horses approaching them. Lloyd asks Javier who are they, and Javier tells him that it was Viscount Lacona, from north of the Marteai's wetlands. The Viscount's knight asks them who was in charge of the project, to which Javier is infuriated and tells him to show some respect. The knight tells him to evacuate the land as it was the property of the Viscount Lacona. But for administrative purposes, the northern parts belonged to Viscount Lacona and the southern part belonged to Baron Frontera. It was obvious for Lacona to show up and assert his ownership of the wetlands as soon as it was reclaimed. He was trying to grab a hold of rich, fertile land without putting in any effort of his own. The knight tells Lloyd that this land belongs to Viscount Lacona. Lloyd was angered by this and tells the knight to shut his mouth as he was talking in between two nobles. Everybody was shocked. Lloyd introduces himself to Viscount Lacona as the son of Baron Frontera, Lloyd Frontera. The Viscount knew about his crude behavior in the past and demanded to see his father, as he was not interested to talk to him. Lloyd ignores him. The Viscount was angered by this and asks him if he was deaf or something. Lloyd tells him that it was like the buzzing of some pesky fly. Lacona searches for the fly. The knight tells him that he was referring a fly to the Viscount himself, which agitated him. Lloyd tells him that according to the Land Act of the Kingdom, Title 321, Special Exemption regarding the development of barren land, he explains to him that according to this law, if any land that is abandoned for more than 100 years, without any activities on it, then the one who develops the land is the owner of the land. And lastly, the land must have at least produced at least one harvest of a crop specified by law. The Viscount was shocked. Also, Javier realized that's why that day, Lloyd asked him to plant the seeds. Lloyd congratulates the Viscount for witnessing the first ever harvest of the Martza's wetlands. The Viscount is checkmated as if Lyopt has already prepared for him to arrive in the past. Lloyd gives him the first crop he harvested and with an angry face asks him to get off his land. Lacona, angered and without any point to make, decides to leave with his men. Javier asks Lloyd if he hears a prophecy from somewhere that they were coming. Lloyd tells him that he has already dealt with people in the Oast just like him, the leeches trying to steal someone else's hard work. The workers raised their hands and were praising Lord Lloyd, who saved them from another crisis. Lloyd makes a bad face and tells the worker to work there quietly. After some days, there were heavy rains pouring on the Marteai's wetlands. Lloyd was inspecting the working of the drainage system from a distance. They have also made a water wheel for better drainage, but still, he has to see to it that there is no problem in the drainage system. Javier joins Lloyd and lifts an umbrella to his head. After some time, the dark clouds vanished, and the drainage system built by him was working really well. The system informs him that this was a monumental achievement in construction, and he has left an indelible mark in the history of civil engineering on the Laurasia continent. As a result, he has been awarded a large amount of RP. Also, his skills have been upgraded to the next level. Lloyd stands up and receives more notifications of the approval rating with the Baron, Baroness, Javier, and other townspeople risen. Lloyd was very happy and proud of his achievement, and now thinks of starting the next stage. Meanwhile, in the Lacona Viscounty, Viscount Lacona is furious with one of his men, as he informs him that the land is fully reclaimed, and realizes that he has lost the land. And finally, the Marteis wetlands will become the golden goose laying golden eggs for Lloyd. The Viscount was super jealous as half of that was his own land and asked the servant to bring him the supervisor of his dye workshop. A few days later, Lloyd wakes up at his mansion with a heavy head but still thinks of going to work as always. He tells Javier that he was heading out for work. Lloyd notices that Javier was looking tired and asks him. Javier never experienced such a severe headache and Lloyd too had the same. He thinks and realizes something was off. Even Ms. Emily, the maid of the Baron's estate, had a bad headache. Also, everyone in the town had a severe headache, including the cows. It was affecting all the townspeople. Also, the animals are avoiding the water. Lloyd speculates that there is something wrong with the water, and realizes that it has to do something with the Ladona berry used for their dye, which makes Lloyd really pissed off. At the Baron's mansion, the Viscount's knight had a meeting with the Baron. He asks him to give back the Marteis wetlands, and if they do so they will stop dumping their dye waste waters into the main river. The Baron is agitated and asks him if he is trying to blackmail them. The knight confirms it, and tells the Baron that he was really blackmailing them. The Baron is furious at him and threatens to go to the court. The knight tells him to do as you please, but it will take at least 2 years before a verdict. With all legal fees and paying for new drinking water, the Baron will return bankrupt. The knight was about to leave the room, but the Baron tells him that his son and his people have put blood and sweat into the land, and he will not give the LN to such low lives as him. The knight bows down with a smirk on his face and was about to leave the room, but instead, he gets hit hard on his face as Lloyd opens the door. Lloyd tells the Baron about the condition of the townspeople, and also tells him that the neighboring Viscounty has been tampering with the river water, and he had come there to discuss the countermeasures for it. Lloyd is shocked as the knight comes yelling at him from behind. He was unaware that there was someone in the room other than them, and taunts the knight. The knight was furious and draws his sword and asks Lloyd for a duel, but he was easily destroyed by Lloyd with the help of his iron shovel, just like in the good old days. Lloyd keeps on beating the knight. It seemed like the Baron was also enjoying the duel. At the Viscounty, Lacona is furious with his knight as he returns with a beat-up face. The knight asks for his forgiveness, but instead, he is surprised as Lacona tells him that he did a very good job getting all beat up. Now they can use this in the court and make a very cruel face. Lloyd and the barony knew what was he thinking, and out of habit, he makes the same face. Looks like all the villains have this face in common. Lloyd tells the soldiers that they will blow them out of water soon, and cheers everyone. He plans to solve their drinking water problems first. They made a pool, and got Hammond to bring in all the water needed. Now that the drinking water problem is solved temporarily, Lloyd tells Javier that they to find some permanent alternative, and tells him that they will construct a water supply system to bring in water from Lake Kapua in the eastern mountains. But the distance is enormous, and due to this, they will face a huge loss. But Lloyd tells him that he has other plans to make sure that they will get enough money to complete the construction. This time it will be 100 times profit. A few months later, Viscount Lacona is all stressed out about something. His servant tells the Viscount that Baron Frontera's eldest son has come there to visit him. Viscount was furious and tells the servant to kick them from there. But the servant insisted to meet them as he was there to help Viscount with the problems he was facing. He finally accepts to meet Lloyd. He asks Lloyd what did he wanted from him. Lloyd tells him that he was there to help the Viscount with his problems. The Viscount tries to hide it from Lloyd, but Lloyd makes a face, tells him to be honest, and tells him that he can save his dye workshop. The Viscount was furious with him as he already knew that Lloyd was the one who was behind all this from the start. Lloyd tells him that due to the wastewater they dumped in the water supply they had to wring the water all the way from Lake Kapua. due to which they suffered a huge loss. The Viscount interrupts Lloyd and tells him to not talk about nonsense, and straight come to the point. Lloyd tells him that there was a huge valley in the middle of the construction, and the only thing they could do was to make a bridge across the valley, so they have to blast off a lot of limestones, to use as the building materials, but some of it accidentally ended up covering the bottom of the valley floor. And they ended up exposing all the limestone bedrock as well. The Viscount is more furious now and tells him, "What does it even have to do with my workshop?" Lloyd explains to him that the water from the valley flows to his dye workshop, and due to all that lime in the water, his dying words were corrupted. Lacona is furious at him and threatens him that he will sue him at the royal court. Lloyd tells him he can do as he pleases, but it will take at least 2 years for the verdict. Until then, everybody will forget about the Ladona dyes, or someone else might just undertake his spot. The Viscount was now getting really worried about his future. Lloyd gets up from his couch and tells the Viscount that all his queries have now been answered and he must leave now. The Viscount is furious and threatens Lloyd that he will make him pay the damages many times over. As Javier and Lloyd were walking, Javier asks Lloyd if there is something that he did not understand there. Lloyd asks him what was it. Javier tells him that Lloyd has now provoked the Viscounty to the court, and he will fight until the bitter end. Also, he has many connections at the capital, and it will also ensure that they will suffer a huge loss if they try to fight it legally. Lloyd interrupts him and tells him to just wait and watch. 1 month later, at the Baron's mansion, the Viscount was on his knees and was asking Lloyd to save his dye workshop. Lloyd taunts him and asks him what happened to the connection of his in the royal court. The Viscount tells him that it was his arrogance which blinded him and is deeply sorry for what he did. Lloyd tells him that he had no interest in his words and what shall he do. The Viscount is crying, and on his knees he begged all his pride in front of Lloyd to save him. Lloyd asked him if his pride was even worth 1/10 of the price of the gold coin. Lacona tells him that even so, he would sell that off 10,000 times over for his mercy. Lloyd tells him that what he wants is not his apology. He just wants a simple signature on this contract. He tells him that if he signs this contract, he will supply water to his workshop in a week. Lacona was terrified when he read the contract. He was furious and tells Lloyd that the price he was asking was simply too much. Lloyd interrupts him and tells him that he was the one who taught him that water was not free. Lacona had no choice but to sign the contract. After the meeting, Lloyd hands over the contract to the Baron. The Baron was shocked when he sees such a large sum of money he will get every month from the Lacona Viscounty. Lloyd assured him that there is no problem with the contract as the generous Viscount signed it by himself. Javier thinks of Lloyd as the devil who is going to torture Lacona to his very end, as he did not specify an date or time of the contract. The Baron tells Lloyd that he has some good news for him, but he stops as he sees the terrifying face of Lloyd. Lloyd tells him that it was nothing and he was just happy with the contract. The Baron continues and tells Lloyd that the old, beat-up treasure they received from the Orc tribe, Count Cremo sends his word that he will purchase it at a handsome price. Lloyd finds it strange as a big shot like him is trying to purchase brand new ones, and still, he is going for the old beat-up artifacts. The Baron tells him that he didn't know the details, but he only knows that there is a huge statue the Count wants to construct. In the Cremo, city of commerce, Count Cremo is having a view of the vast ocean from his castle. And out of nowhere a huge lobster-type creature which was named Gigatitan comes out of the water, which scared the Count. At the mansion, Javier informs the Barrow that they will be leaving for Cremo after the work on the water supply is finished. And also tells him that Lloyd will have just 10 men with him during the journey. The Baron tells him that he understands him. Javier tells him not to worry about him, as he will watch over him closely. The Baron tells him when in the past Viscount Lacona came to take half of the reclaimed wetlands. If it was in the past, the Baron would have been terrified and simply handed it over. But after watching Lloyd's efforts, he found some courage of his own. Javier tells him he was the kindest and warmest person, more so than anyone else. The Baron appreciates the kind words and tells him that even so, it does not make him a good leader. A good leader should have the qualities, just like Lloyd right now. Javier thinks of Lloyd as the money-making monster. The Baron tells Javier that his mission is no longer to monitor Lloyd, and from now on he is assigned to protect Lloyd, the heir of the land. Javier accepts this with pride, but he still has some doubt in his mind regarding Lloyd. We see a flashback to when Javier was just a kid. The Baron asked Javier what did he want to become when he grow up. Javier tells him that he will become a knight and protect his lord. The Baron thanks him and tells him that one day he will become the world's strongest knight, and later he gave a wooden sword which he had craved by himself, but it was broken by the young Lloyd. Until this day Javier has not forgotten it. At night, Lloyd is waiting for Javier to sing his lullaby and to make him sleep. He sings the lullaby and makes Javier sleep. In his sleep, Javier remembers all the past events and was really happy for him. In the dark night, both Javier and Lloyd very having a great time sleeping. Out of nowhere someone opens the window and tries to stab Lloyd, but Javier senses this and quickly gets his sword and leaps towards the knight. Javier sliced the blade in half and took care of the knight by himself. At the construction, Javier informs Lloyd that he has handed the man to Viscount Lacona. Javier tells him that he was targeted because the Viscount has been paying a lot for the water and probably he fired his knight first. And he tried to kill him to get his revenge. Lloyd was being ignorant. Javier asks him if he knew this from the start, and why didn't he take any countermeasures for this. Lloyd tells him that he did not care as Javier was always by his side. Lloyd tells him that he trusts Javier more than anyone. Javier is touched by his words and is confused about what to say, and makes a disappointed face. The approval rating Javier has increased by 15 points. Lloyd tells him that they will be able to finish the construction by the next day, and then they can head to Cremo. After the construction was over, they were heading to Cremo. Lloyd was asleep while Javier was carrying him on the horse. He didn't like it, so he just shook his shoulder and woke up Lloyd. Lloyd asks him if he hit him, but Javier denied it, and they both started to argue over it. Lloyd jumps down his horse and asks Javier to teach him how to ride a horse. And out of nowhere, the system informs Lloyd that the rumors of him building the first waterworks on the continent is spreading fast. Also, his reputation as an engineer has increased. His name will go down in the construction history of this kingdom and the continent. Due to this, he receives a huge amount of RP. Lloyd was really proud and starts to laugh, but Javier thinks that he has lost his mind as he is angry 1 minute and starts to laugh the other. The journey to Cremo was not a short one. As they approached, winter drew near, and they finally reached Cremo by the midwinters. Count Cremo gives Lloyd a warm welcome to the county and introduces himself. Both Javier and Lloyd bow down to the Count and greets him. The Count is surprised by how different he looked from his imagination. He thought that he was an engineer and he will have similar characteristics to his, but here it was the opposite of what he thought as he was looking so noble. And then the Count approached Javier, as he thought he was the talented engineer of the Frontera barony. Lloyd tries to get his attention, but he is ignored by the Count. The Count asks Javier, thinking as if he was Lloyd, and offers him the marriage proposal for his daughter. Lloyd interrupts their conversation, due to which the Count is furious at him. Lloyd is tensed, and the system too taunts him. It took some time for the Count to understand who the real son of Baron was. He slips it as a joke and laughs and asks for his forgiveness. Lloyd was super depressed due to this. The Count tells him that it was his fault too, as he was born with a servant's face. Also, the system taunts him the same. Count Cremo was quite an important figure in the Night of Blood and Iron. In it, Javier becomes a wanted criminal after beheading the moneylenders Shiloh and Meatloaf. Javier goes into hiding and is eventually arrested by the Count in Cremo. But Count was kind and ends up providing a lot of support to Javier in many ways. Back to the present. The Count tells Lloyd that he wants to build a statue in the sea, and that is why he wanted to buy the old artifacts. Lloyd asks him why he needs to build a statue in the sea. The Count tells him that the trade in Cremo was in decline due to the Gigaton that appeared a few years ago in the ocean. Due to its fear, people are scared to trade with Cremo anymore. In the novel too, the same happened, and due to this the Count faced a major crisis, but he was unable to remember the Gigaton in the novel. The Count tells him that he has done a lot of research and discovered that the mermaids are the strongest warriors who rule over the seas, and the mermaids are the objects of fear for the Gigaton. And that's why he was going to build a statue of the mermaid to obstruct fear on the Gigaton. But Count has already given up on this idea, as they have to increase the height of the seabed for the base of the statue, and due to this the ships will not have enough space. But still, he will buy the artifacts as promised. Lloyd tells him that he can build a base without disturbing the water levels. Just like that, we see Lloyd and Javier on a boat surveying the seabed. Due to the winter, Lloyd's eyes burn on his face, and Javier had a smirky look on his face, so Lloyd asked him why did he look so happy. Javier tells him that it's the first time that watching someone suffer has made him happy. Lloyd was depressed due to the cold. Javier asks him if he had checked all the details of the contract, and if it was really going to happen, to build up the ground vertically up from the seabed, unless they are going to use some kind of magic. Lloyd tells him it was possible with the magic of cement, but the question was how is he supposed to make cement? As they reach the port, a beautiful girl asks him if he was Master Lloyd, and she wants to give him a letter. Lloyd was confused. The girl tells them that she is Christine and she was the daughter of the Count, and the day before she saw Lloyd walking in the courtyard, and asks him to accept the letter, but instead of giving it to Lloyd, she offers it to Javier instead. Lloyd was devastated, but he already thought that this was going to happen. Javier takes the letter and puts it into his coat. The girl was happy and runs away cheerfully. Lloyd was furious. Javier tries to go away, but Lloyd asks him what was this. He was really frustrated, and Javier asks him what was wrong with that, and asks him if he had not received a letter before. It was right on the spot, and Javier is shocked and confused about what was he supposed to say. He sincerely wishes Lloyd the best of luck. Lloyd returns to his dome and is visibly not jealous because he is going to make a lot of money and be rich. He was interrupted by Cremo. Lloyd quickly puts up a happy face, and Cremo informs him that he has bought all the important materials he asked for, but he was unable to fetch the volcanic ash. Lloyd thinks a bit as volcanic ash is necessary for the Roman-style cement due to its durability. The Count tells him that if he needs volcanic ash he will have to wait 1.5 years and he cannot afford that long. Lloyd assures the Count that he will find another way. He thinks of it, and figures out that he has to make the Portland cement, but he was unable to remember the ingredients for it. He has now tried 130 different types of mixture, but he is unable to create the Portland cement. As he was working tirelessly, all 3 of them watched him and were sad as due to his work he was not able to pay attention to them. They all jump on him and tried to get his attention, and he yells at them. In his past life so he had a dog pet, but he was unable to give it as much time, and one day it died. And he regrets it to this day. Lloyd finally takes all of them and gives them a tight hug. And takes them out for a walk. The 3 of them were really happy. Lloyd thinks of himself as he was an awful person, and asks them for his forgiveness as he was only using them as heavy machinery. He kneels down and thanks them for their help. The mystical creatures acknowledged his sincere feelings and they considered him a family, which enabled him a new upgrade to one of them. Padong and Hamon tell Lloyd to use the skill on Bangul, and Lloyd uses the skill on Bangul. A light show begins, and with a huge light the screen informs him that Bangul has gained a new skill, Volcanic Blast. Lloyd is really happy as it is just what he needs to make cement. Later that day, a huge explosion occurred near the Count. Everybody was shocked, even the Count peeked from the window. The explosion let out a huge cloud of volcanic ash. It was Lloyd and Javier who were testing the new ability of Bangul. Lloyd was happy to see the ash and tells Javier. But Javier was unable to hear anything. Lloyd tells Javier that he was ugly and Javier replied that he was not ugly as Lloyd. And now, thanks to Bangul, construction can be really possible. The first stage was to build and install a giant diaper to filter the volcanic ash. That day, everybody present in the county, there witnessed the power of the son of the Frontera Baron and was shocked. The Count is impressed with Lloyd and thinks to keep a close eye on him till the construction was over, and then give a detailed report to His Majesty the King. The second step was to make a caisson to pour the cement onto, and then place it in the sea. Then use Hamon to one-shot the water to remove the water from the caisson. Stage 3 was to cover the bottom of the caisson with friction poles. Javier was waiting for more poles to arrive, and Lloyd seemed like he was expecting something from Javier. Javier asked him what was he seeking. Lloyd tells him that he should have a complaint like he usually does. Javier throws the hammer down and tells Lloyd that he is a knight and he should not hammer. Lloyd, as usual, tells him that he is the knight that escorts him. If he did not hammer the posts, and then the Baron will not be able to clear the debts. Lloyd uses his usual sentimental dialogues and Javier has no option but to do the work. After the posts were in, now the next stage begins. Use the Bengal steel dung to build a steel frame and then finally pour in the long-awaited cement. Once the cement is hardened, dismantle the caisson and finally, the artificial sea platform is ready. The Count is impressed by his work and asks him if the platform will able to support the huge statue's weight, and also tells him that if it succeeds to do so he will pay a huge amount of construction fees to him. The statue has been established, and there was a grand celebration for this achievement. The Count introduced the people to Lloyd, and this time too, to his luck, people went before Javier thinking that he was Lloyd due to his noble looks. The Count once more laughs it off and introduced people to the real Lloyd. At some distance, there is a huge creature in the water. As it surfaces it is clear that it was the Gigantitan. The huge creature sees the statue of the mermaid and rushed to attack it as if it was only one mermaid. Everybody was having a good time at the party. Javier was having his fruity, but he feels something in the ocean, and Lloyd asks him what was the matter. Javier tells him that something is heading in this direction. Javier tells him that it is extraordinarily fast, and has a size of at least Hamong at his biggest. Lloyd is really scared now. He knew what was coming. Lloyd quickly runs to the Count and tells him to ask everyone to evacuate the place as soon as possible as the Gigantitan was approaching them. The Count asks his knight that does they detect anything strange in the ocean. The knight observes the sea and tells Count that he does not. The Count assures Lloyd that he can trust his knight as he was a master-level sword master. The Count tells him that the Gigantitan do not come this close to the shore, and there is no reason for it to attack them. Lloyd tells him that they have now created one and looks toward the statue. All of them have a very tense look, and the Count orders his men to evacuate as soon as possible. Lloyd tells Javier to take care of the anchor as it was taking too long for them to unanchor the ship. Javier jumps out of the ship into the open water, and Lloyd throws Padong in the air for some extra help. Underwater, Javier uses his mana blast chop to get rid of the anchor, and Lloyd uses Padong to get rid of the additional supports. As Javier chops down the anchors, he notices the Gigantitan has sped up and has arrived on time. As the humongous Gigantitan surfaces, all the ships were startled and Lloyd is sent in the air. It attacks the mermaid statue. Due to this, both Padong and the mermaid statue are sent flying. Javier arrives on time and saves Lloyd. On the other hand, the pieces of the statue fall on the coast, leading to huge damage. There was chaos everywhere. Lloyd thinks quickly and uses Hamon to save the people who are drowning using his one-shot skill. There the Gigantitan follows the statue to secure the kill and enters the coast. Javier thinks of stopping the Gigantitan and asks Lloyd for help. But Lloyd instead tells him that they will not get into their internal affairs and tells Javier to join him and escape this mess safely. But Javier wanted to save the people from the Gigantitan. Lloyd tries to explain to him, but Javier loses his trust in him and draws his sword and leaps towards the Gigantitan. The system informs Lloyd that his approval rating of him has decreased by 5 points. Here at the coast, the townspeople are trying to resist using their cannons, but they failed due to the hard exoskeleton of the Gigantitan. The Gigantitan launches a projectile due to which the tower was erased from its existence. It searches for the remaining mermaid statue, and as it finds it rushes towards it, causing mass destruction in the town. While escaping, a commoner falls on the ground and was about to be crushed by the Gigantitan, but is saved by Javier. Even his mana blast slice bounced off, causing the Gigantitan to slip and fall on the ground. The Gigantitan is furious and uses its pincers to attack Javier, but he dodges it easily. The Gigantitan attacks Javier using the projectiles. Javier, unable to block it, tries to block it using his sword but is instead thrown away with a huge force. Javier received huge damage, but he didn't want to back off as the townspeople were in danger. Lloyd was trying to escape and thinks that he has all construction-related skills that cannot be used against such a monster, but soon he realizes that he must help the people and uses Bangul as a surfing board to reach the coast as soon as possible. At the coast, Javier is trying to keep up with the monster and attacks its eyes, thinking as if it were its weak spots. But in time, the Gigantitan whips its tentacles and saves itself. Javier was about to get hit by the whip, but Hamon comes to his rescue. Lloyd has finally reached the coast and is furious at the Gigantitan for destroying his cash flow. Javier thinks of it as his chance and attacks the Gigantitan in the eye with his might. But even though Javier attacked the Gigantitan in its eyes, it was of no use. Javier was confused about what should he do next to stop the beast. Even though he thought he was going to lose, he was calm, as Lloyd is with him in the fight. 2.5 minutes earlier, Lloyd, with the help of Padong, surveyed the whole construction of Gigantitan's exoskeleton as he used his surveying skill on it. He notices that as Javier attacked the Gigatian, all the energy migrated to a single spot, and concludes that all the energy is being absorbed in its hollow horn, and then it is released. The first thing they have to do is to deal with the horn. Lloyd enters the simulation mode and realizes that the spot where there's a water sac for its hydraulic claw is a weak spot, and if they can strike the area with the mana blast, they can surely destroy that beast. Javier asks Lloyd what are they supposed to do. Lloyd tells him in sign language that he has to cut off its horn. Javier dodges the attack from the beast and jumps into the sky and thought that cutting the horn will do nothing to the Gigatitan, but still he will do it as he trusts his master. Javier rushes to cut the horn, but Lloyd tells him that it will be hard for him to cut the horn even though it is hollow. Lloyd tells him that he has to use the mana slice but with much more intensity. Javier was successful in creating a new skill mana chainsaw and was somewhat able to slice the horn. The Gigatitan tries to attack Javier, but it is intercepted by Padong. And finally, Javier was able to slice the horn of the Gigatitan. The Gigatitan yells in pain and Javier lands on the ground safely but is crushed under the humongous Gigatitan. Only thing that was able to escape was his sword. Lloyd was devastated. A few seconds earlier, we see Javier was about to get crushed by the huge Gigatitan but is saved by Padong. Padong scolds Javier for his reckless behavior. Javier gets a hold of his sword and is once again ready to fight with the Gigatitan as he trusts his master more than anybody else here. Lloyd was continuously scanning for the outcome which will not lead to their death. He finally is ready with a plan to beat the monster and asks Padong to be at his command. Lloyd mounts Padong and asks it to take him to the place and orders Javier to lure the beast along the coast into the woods. 15 minutes earlier, the Count was in despair for such a beast heading to the coast and is now going to destroy the whole region, and understood that his plan to drive out the beast with a statue was a total flop. Lloyd tells him that the monster is now heading to the mainland to destroy the remaining statue. He also tells him to do something until then Javier and himself will buy some time. Coming back to the present, Lloyd is trying to drive the beast with him as Lloyd instructed him, but he was also near his limit and thought he can't do it anymore. But still, he does his duty to drive the monster to the woods away from the people. As Javier reached the desired place, Lloyd signaled the Count and brings in the statue of the mermaid in a chariot. As the statue close by, it struck fear into the mind of the Gigatitan. As the Titan was stunned, Javier quickly leaps at it and uses his mana blast, but it was not enough. He was just able to knock the outer covering and now a single blow was enough to kill the beast, but Javier was not having sufficient stamina left to take it down, and as he was falling down, he thought he has lost. But Lloyd tells him to leave the rest to him. Javier is unconscious and was saved by Ham from falling on the ground. Lloyd didn't have a plan, but still he dashes at the monster. He tries to calculate everything, but he was sure of his failure as Padong was also at its limit. Lloyd signals Padong, and he was launched into the air toward the monster. Lloyd was already ready for this moment, and has prepared for it when he decided to save the people. When he was in the ocean, he upgraded his skill to get a triple mana circle. And now Lloyd was ready to use it as he was hanging to deliver the last blow. He uses his iron shovel and summons the mana blast. As he was preparing to deliver the final blow, a rock hits him, and he is brutally injured, due to which he loses his grip and starts to fall to the ground. But still, unconsciously he summons the triple heart, and uses all of them at once, as he was supposed to use only 2 mana circles at once, and the other was to protect the manheart. Lloyd attacks the beast with a triple core mana blast, due to which a huge explosion takes place. The huge beast is in the air and falls on the ground and is therefore killed by Lloyd. It was a night with a full moon, and all 3 of them has survived the incident. Padong and others try to wake Javier, as he was lying unconscious on the ground. Javier is happy to see all of them safe and sees the body of the Gigatitan lying cold, and is confused. How did the master manage to kill something this powerful? Padong starts to cry and all 3 of them take Javier somewhere. Javier is shocked to see Lloyd lying on the ground. He quickly rushed to him and checks his heartbeat. Javier was heartbroken to hear no sound and knew that Lyod's heart has stopped beating. After a few days, the Baron receives a letter from the Count through the messenger pigeon. As he reads the letter, he is in awe. He quickly gets on his horse and rushed to Count Cremo. The Baron was in despair and was going alone to see Lloyd, but he was interrupted by the Baroness and his knight Sir Byron. The Baroness yells at him for leaving them without a word. All 3 of them continued their journey through the fierce winter, and out of nowhere, a huge monster appears in front of them. Sir Byron tells both of them to leave and reach Count Cremo as soon as possible, as he will wait here and take care of the monster alone. The Baron asks for his forgiveness and tells Sir Byron to live and meet him in the Count. The monster attacks him and his sword is broken in an instant. He was shocked, and the monster attacked him once more and grabs him with his fangs. Byron uses his dagger and stabs the beast, but the damage was too little for the huge monster. The wolf monster continues to crush Byron, but it was interrupted as the Baron attacked it from the back. Also, the Baroness attacked the monster using her dagger. The beast screeches in pain, and finally, they were able to kill the beast. The Baron helps Byron to get up and asks the Baroness if she was hurt. The Baron was terrified to see more of the monsters have arrived. Byron takes out the sword from the beast and is once more ready to fight. Both parties charged at each other, but out of nowhere, Javier steps in. Javier quickly draws his sword and killed all the monsters in an instant, and informs the Baron that he is here to escort him. Byron was shocked to see how much has Javier improved from before the Cremo mission. Both the Baron and Baroness asked Javier if Lloyd was okay. Javier was not able to answer their question and tells them about the whole incident. That day, when Javier finds out that Lloyd's heart has stopped and was in despair, he holds his hand and notices that Lloyd still had a pulse. He once again checked and finds out that Lloyd was still breathing but faintly. He further inspected him and finds out about the triple heart circle spinning around his heart at an unbelievable speed. But yet he was not able to judge the condition of his heart due to the magnetic field and concludes that the strong mana rotations are keeping him alive. Also, now he finally knew what made the Gigantitan come to be that way. Present day, at Count Cremo, everybody was building back their home and everything was slowly getting normal. The Baron tells Javier that it would have been a nightmare to fight such a terrific creature. Javier tells him that it was Lloyd who vanquished the Gigantitan, and both of them were shocked to hear this. As Javier was taking them to the manor where the young master was, they met many people who were going to the manor for thanking Lloyd for saving them from the difficult times with the help of his great summons. As all of them reached the manor, they were shocked to see such a huge number of people had gathered there to thank Lloyd. Everybody was just having one thought of well-being towards the young master. One of the people from the crowd talks shit about Lloyd and the people there start to get agitated. They all started to beat the man into a pulp for saying such things to their savior. Here, Lloyd's heart starts to beat once more, and the system informs Lloyd that his courage and sacrifice have deeply moved the people of Cremo, and due to this, he will receive an enormous reward for his achievement. Lloyd opens his eyes, and tries to remember the events after he used the triple core mana blast, and thinks that he must have been dead as his heart should have exploded. He asks about his doubt about the system, and it informs him that he will soon find out that. Javier enters the room and is shocked to see Lloyd awake. Lloyd asks Javier when will they pay them for the construction. Javier thinks a bit and is really happy to see Lloyd as he was in the past. Both Baron and the Baroness enter the room and give Lloyd a very tight hug, as they were really happy to see him alive. At the royal capital Magenta, Count Cremo's letter was being presented to the Majesty. The Queen was impressed by Lloyd's deeds and asks her soldiers to send a messenger to the Frontera barony and bring both Lloyd and his knight Javier, as she wanted to meet Lloyd and judge him for herself. Lloyd was in the buggy waiting for someone. The system tells him that the stories of his great courage, wisdom, and self-sacrifice are spreading all over the land. But Lloyd seems to be uninterested in it. The system then informs him that he has received 1,500 RP points, which instantly makes him happy. The system tells him about the Mana Heart skill and informs him that he has a Mana Heart now, as his Mana Heart was born, not as a result of regular training, but from the impact of the Mana Blast. Count Cremo enters the buggy, and Lloyd is ready to execute his ultimate plan. Lloyd asks him about the budget for the repairs of the streets and the buildings that were damaged. Count tells him that it was about 1 month's worth of the city's budget. Lloyd tells him in a serious way, it would have been over at least half a year's worth if the Gigantitan was not knocked. The Count is now getting serious and asks him what did he meant by that. Lloyd, just like a villain, tricks Count to give threefold the construction fees as he saved the people as well the town by himself. Lloyd makes a demon face and the Count is struck by fear. Lloyd takes his hand forward looking for a handshake with a bright smile. The Count has to give him a handshake even though he thought he has been extorted. Finally, they reach their destination. Everybody there was excited to see Lloyd. But Lloyd was uninterested in it. Lloyd then delivers his few words. He asks the people if they have heard of the Andal system. and waits for the answer, but the people were unknown of the word. Lloyd face bombs and delivers a speech on the Andal system and its uses, and instead of motivating people he gives the people a sales speech just like a salesman, and leaves the place after his speech was finished. After a few days, Lloyd finally reached the Frontera barony, his one and only home. Lloyd and Javier were on the construction site as always, and they heard an unknown noise. Lloyd asked Javier, and he replied him that this was the sound of the horn announcing the arrival of the royal messenger. Lloyd was a bit skeptical about this. The red carpet was put on the ground and the royal messenger makes a flashy entry and starts to read the letter. Lloyd was agitated by this performance, and the Baron and Baroness arrived on the spot. Lloyd had a bad feeling about this. The messenger finally started to read the letter, and the system tells him that the favor with the Baron had increased by +9 points, and he received some RP. Lloyd was happy for the RP, but he really had a very bad feeling about it, as he learned it in his past life. Whenever he tried his best and built something, he was instantly given another task and was stuck in the loop. He knew if the Royal Majesty was involved with this, then it was the end. The messenger tells Lloyd that both himself and Javier are ordered to travel immediately to the royal capital. Lloyd's eyes are filled with tears and he thinks that the giant lobster has put a curse on him. The royal soldiers along with Lloyd started to head toward the royal palace. Javier asks Lloyd why was his face like a man who was going to be executed. Lloyd comes back to his senses and realizes that he has to take the advantage of the queen as he knows the future. They finally reach the royal palace, and are being presented to the queen. Lloyd started to introduce himself to the queen, but once more it seemed like the queen too mistook Javier for Lloyd. The queen tells Javier that he has a powerful mana flow, and he can be a worthy sparring partner. Javier tells her that he was just a nameless knight. Lloyd understands that the queen is no ordinary, as she was able to know Javier's powers just by looking at him, and now simple flattery won't work on her. The queen thanks both of them for their bravery, but she wanted to test Lloyd's skills and get to see the miracle engineer on the work by herself. The queen asks Lloyd what construction project he thinks is most urgently needed in the Magenta royal capital. Lloyd was able to grasp the situation and knew the whole plot of the story. The queen expects Lloyd to answer to be repairing the royal palace, and if he fails to answer this correctly she will not acknowledge him. Lloyd answered the queen and said that the most important project is to build a new bridge on the Magina River. He knew that it was not the answer she expected, and even so, she asks him the reason for it. Lloyd tells her that others may think repairing the royal palace is the most urgent now, as he knew that a very long time ago a badly tempered dragon took off with the palace's tower, and to prevent it from happening again. The entire structure of the royal palace was dome-shaped, and due to which the weight of the structure is pressing down on the ground and its pillars is causing it to slowly crumble. However, the repairs would only be necessary at a later date, and he told the queen that it was not urgent to repair the royal castle. The queen thought of Lloyd as an impudent man as he knew what answer she was thinking, and yet he gave her a different answer. Lloyd too knew about her, knowing that he gave the wrong answer on purpose, and the queen confirmed his thought by seeing Lloyd's smirky face. Lloyd tells her that the current bridge across the river has been built 12 times already because it is unable to withstand the rising waters in the spring. And each time this happens people in the kingdom are inconvenienced, and also a huge amount has to be spent on the reconstruction of the bridge. Lloyd ensures the queen that he can build a bridge that will not collapse even if there are spring floods or drift ice. Lloyd was thinking of building a modern suspension bridge. The queen was confused and asks Lloyd to tell her more about the bridge. It seemed like Lloyd was able to trap the queen and starts to talk about the bridge. The queen asks him to stop as she suddenly lost interest. Lloyd explains the queen's character, as in the novel she was betrayed by the one she cherished and loses one of her arms, and turns evil. But this story was 3 years in the future, and right now she is an honorable queen who listens even to the lowly. The queen asked Lloyd what if the bridge fails. Lloyd asks her to behead him if something like that happens, but in exchange, while the bridge stands she has to guarantee his family's well-being. The queen finally smiles and orders Lloyd to carry out his plans, and she will promise him reasonable compensation and upholding of his family's station. Lloyd on his knees slides further toward the queen and gives a contract to the queen. The queen asks him if he does not trust her words. Lloyd tells her that this contract stated that if he was unable to construct this bridge in an honest manner then he should be. The queen has no option but to sign the contract. Lloyd and Javier left the courtroom with the signed contract. Lloyd starts to dance and brags about his accomplishment to Javier. Javier was quite worried as he would have lost his life if the queen thought he was being disrespectful. In the courtroom, the queen and the queen's knight were having a conversation about the miracle engineer, and the queen tells the knight that Lloyd was quite adorable. A few days later, Lloyd was on his way to see the royal capital and Javier asks him if he will be alright alone. Lloyd assures him that there is no need for Javier to protect him as he was in the most protected region in the kingdom. Besides, it was also a huge pain to walk with him in the capital. Javier tells him to tell Master Julian that he was doing well, and Lloyd leaves the room. Lloyd recalls in the novel, Julian Frontera, who was his brother and was studying in the Royal Academy, was kicked out when the Baron lost everything and was unable to pay the tuition. Then he dies, wandering around at night, killed by a thief. But now it will not happen as the Baron was having more than enough money. Lloyd is in front of the Royal Academy excited to see his little brother. At the Royal Academy, Lloyd confronts Julian and gives him what his mother asked him to deliver. Julian was suspicious of Lloyd as he did not call him the name as usually he does. The system alerts him, but then he calls him the name and was about to leave the room and remembers about his mother has also asked to have lunch with him. So, he asked Julian to come with him for lunch. Julian was skeptical and was not sure who was he meeting, as Lloyd has completely changed from before. At the restaurant, Julian and Lloyd were completely awkward. Julian asked the waiter for a basic set, but Lloyd insisted to get something more expensive, but he was still suspicious about Lloyd. Lloyd orders 2 special set DS, and as the waiter asked him for wine he declines and says that he has quit drinking. Julian was confused and remembers when someone from the royal palace told him about the Cremo incident, and how Lloyd saved Cremo. Julian was unable to believe his words and thought Lloyd stole Javier's credit. Out of nowhere, a fellow student beats Julian from behind and asks him what was he doing there. Julian was stressed out and tells him that something came up. The student starts to bully him. Lloyd was watching everything silently and notices that everyone was enjoying the scene instead of helping poor Julian. The student mocks Julian and tells him that he was the son of Viscount Lacona. Lloyd started to compute, and after the calculation was completed he was ready to execute his plan. Lloyd asked the student what his father did for a living. The bully starts to brag about his father but is slapped in the face by Lloyd, due to which he flew in the air and fell on the ground. Lloyd introduces his new skill Mana B *TCH slap. The other students started to fight back but they were one by one slapped by Lloyd. He slapped everybody, even the students who were just giggling. The Lacona's son came from back and was successful in hitting him with his mana punch, but he was terrified as it caused little to no damage to Lloyd. Due to this, Lloyd starts to have an evil transformation. Lloyd grabs the bully and headbutts him again and again. Julian was worried as he thought that he has lost his mind. He tries to ask for help from the vice superintendent but he has gone. Lloyd takes the bully and smashed his face on the wall. And Julian has no option but to stop Lloyd all by himself. Julian grabs Lloyd from behind and asks him to stop. Lloyd asks him if he was worried about being bullied worse after this, and assures him if he's dead, he can't bully him. Julian was shocked to see him saying such cruel words with a smiley face. Lloyd then once again starts to beat the bully and showed him what really the fear of death was. The royal guards have now arrived at the restaurant and ordered Lloyd to stop beating him. Lloyd gets calm in an instant, which shocks Julian. He then introduced himself and his brother to the dean and apologizes for causing such a commotion, and tells them he was just trying to restore the Majesty's honor. The dean then asks who dared to sully Her Majesty's name. Lloyd points at the son of the Lacona family who was abusing his little brother Julian, and also he points at the vice superintendent as he has no intention of restraining him. Lloyd knew that these were the sons of rich people and any of the men from the staff did not want to get into it. So, they just turned a blind eye to the bullying. The dean asked Lloyd what does it have to do with Her Majesty. Lloyd explains to him that an insult to his brother is his insult, and pulls out his royal guest badge, which shocked everyone. Lloyd hopes that the dean understood the situation, so he was about to leave the place. The dean had the intention to punish Julian after Lloyd left, as the status of the royal guest is temporary. But he was terrified when he saw the killer face Lloyd. As they were walking along the corridor, Lloyd told him that they were heading to the administrator's office. Julian asks him why were they going there. Lloyd tells him that was going to request a leave of absence for him. which infuriated Julian, and he asks him what was he actually planning to do. Lloyd told him that he is going to have a vacation as this place is not going to be good for studying for a few days, and tells him that he is going on a vacation to rest his mind and get his body in shape. At the royal guest quarters, Julian was having a conversation with Javier. Julian asked Javier about Lloyd and how did he change. Javier tells him that Lloyd has turned up a new leaf and assured him to trust Lloyd. Lloyd was at the hearing of the conversation and was happy, but his happiness was short-lived as they start to talk trash about him. Javier tells Julian that he has a suspicion that someone has stole Lloyd's body. Lloyd was tensed as he hears it standing behind the door. Javier reveals that he has been investigating Lloyd's body when he was asleep. But he didn't find any clues, which makes Lloyd tension-free. Julian was skeptical of Lloyd helping to get the Baron out of debt, but is really happy for his accomplishment. Lloyd's approval rating by Julian increased by +2 points. Lloyd opens the door and asks both of them if they were ready. He explains to them the process for manufacturing modern suspension bridge cables. Step 1: spread the oil-based clay to make a 3 feet wide pizza dough base. Then top the dough with all kinds of dirt and rocks to complete the pizza. Step 3: eat up, feed Bangul the pizza. Step 4: expel and collect the metal from Bangul. Step 5: after the metal wire has cooled, gather it and roll 120 strands together. And everything was ready for more manufacturing of the wire. Lloyd hands over the shovel to Julian and tells him that this is the starting point of the whole project, and that if he messed this up the whole project will meet the end. It's not just for the debt, but this time his future was on the line. Julian asks him why he trusts him on such an important project. Lloyd tells him that it was important for someone intelligent and responsible to be in charge of the project, someone like Julian. Julian was confused as well, flustered by such words from Lloyd. Lloyd was heading to the royal blacksmith for help as it would be impossible for him to complete such a huge project all by himself. He was there to get help from the royal dwarf master craftsman, Corgidus. Corgidus declines his offer even before he could say anything, and tells him that he did not want to hear anything from him. Lloyd shows him the blueprints of the bridge. Corgidus tries to get him out of his workplace, but the blueprints grab his attention. Lloyd plays dumb and rolls the blueprint, and as he was leaving, the Corgidus asks him to wait and tells him that the rigidity of the structure as per the blueprint must be exact, or otherwise, the bridge will collapse. Lloyd tells him that if something like that happens, everyone will blame Corgidus as he did not help in the construction. Corgidus thinks of this as a threat and is agitated. Lloyd tells him it was just a plea. Corgidus asks him for the blueprint and is amazed to see such a beautiful structure and accepts the offer. The work of the construction was going on smoothly. Lloyd and Javier were on the bank of the river for the construction of the suspension towers. But they are interrupted by royal guards and treat them as a criminal of the kingdom for trying to defraud the Majesty herself, which terrifies Lloyd. At the royal court, the men tell the Majesty that there is already a bridge on the Magina River that has stood for 30 years, and Lloyd is creating unnecessary work to go after the royal funds. And therefore, they petition the Majesty to punish the fraudsters. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching.